kidding me? No! No, come on! This is too much!
A wrestler's finishing move is their most protected and most devastating move in their arsenal. This means that when the exact move is used on them by their opponent, it acts as the ultimate insult.
Chin up! No!
Over the years, there have been a number of instances where this has occurred, and it's usually in a major pay-per-view, as the moment itself is special and unique and will leave a lasting memory with the audience. But which wrestler stole another wrestler's finisher? Well, join us now as we look at 10 finishes that were stolen during a WWE match. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Number 1. Randy Orton gets RKO'd by Seth Rollins at Extreme Rules 2015. Seth Rollins winning the WWE title at WrestleMania 31 was one of the greatest moments in WrestleMania history, and what followed was a decent first reign as WWE Champion for the future multi-time World Champion. Rollins' first feud as champion would be against the Viper Randy Orton. Now, the rematch would take place at 2015's Extreme Rules pay-per-view, and the match itself was inside a steel cage and had the added stipulation that Orton wasn't able to use the RKO in the match. Now, the finish of the match came when Rollins stole Orton's finisher and laid out the Legend Killer with his own finishing move. This allowed Rollins to escape the cage and retain the WWE title in the process. Number 2. John Cena hits The Rock with the Rock Bottom at WrestleMania 29. John Cena and The Rock's WrestleMania 29 rematch didn't have the same fire and attention that the initial installment of the match had. This meant that when the two wrestled in the main event, fan interest wasn't really there, meaning that the two were met with mostly a dead crowd. Okay, it wasn't 205 Live dead, but this is a WrestleMania main event here. Now, in order to try and wake up the crowd, they did a spot where The Rock would be hit by his own finisher. This was halfway through the match and came completely out of nowhere, but it did indeed get one of the biggest reactions of the entire match. Cena would hit The Rock with a trademark Rock Bottom, however, it wasn't enough for the 1, 2, 3. Number 3. Chris Jericho hits HBK with Sweet Chin Music at WrestleMania 19. The story going into the Chris Jericho vs Shawn Michaels feud at WrestleMania 19 was that Jericho idolized HBK as a kid, and he felt he needed to defeat him on the grandest stage of them all, possibly to solidify himself as the best in the world. The match itself was one of the best matches in WrestleMania history and was just a start of some of the legendary matches to come between the two wrestlers. And one of the highlights of the match involved Jericho hitting HBK with Sweet Chin Music.
Sweet Chin Music! Oh, we got it!
The move would connect, but it wouldn't be enough for the 1, 2, 3. The incorporation of the stolen finisher aligned extremely well with the storyline and the narrative that both men were following in the classic match. Number 4. Randy Orton and John Cena trade finishes at the 2014 Royal Rumble. When Randy Orton and John Cena wrestled for the WWE title at the Royal Rumble, fans had no desire to see the match for what seemed like the 1000th time. We're not joking, this had probably been the 20th installment of the match. And the fans in Pittsburgh actively turned on the match with chants of "You both suck" and Daniel Bryan taking up the majority of the crowd chants. The crowd response obviously took an effect on the match, as at one stage Orton paused in the ring to listen to what the crowd were chanting, but it wasn't until halfway through the match that both men decided to switch it up in order to garner some interest, also in the hopes that the fans wouldn't completely shit on the match. Now, Orton and Cena began to steal each other's finishing moves, as Orton would hit an AA on Cena, and then Cena would hit an RKO on Orton. Despite being a cool visual, it did little to turn the crowd despite the efforts of both men. Number 5. Triple H tombstones The Undertaker at WrestleMania 27. The highlight of WrestleMania 27 was without question the match between Triple H and The Undertaker. The match continued the trend of The Undertaker having WrestleMania show stealers, and the match that would act as part 1 in what would become an epic saga between the two, which will culminate at the following year's Mania. And during the match, Taker took a lot of damage, including chair shots and multiple pedigrees. This would mark the first time that someone outside of Kane had used the tombstone on The Undertaker. The stolen finisher therefore became incredibly memorable and cemented the match as one of the best of both men's respective careers. Number 6. Vengeance 2002. And one of the best triple threat matches in WWE history occurred at the 2002 Vengeance pay-per-view. The match featured The Rock versus Kurt Angle versus The Undertaker for the WWE title in an absolute classic that fans pretty much talk about to this day. The reason that the match was so well received was that it had a little bit of everything. It had comedy, it had action, and it had thrills from three legendary wrestlers. One of the more notable spots in the match came early on when The Rock laid out The Undertaker with a chokeslam. This was then followed up by The Rock applying the ankle lock to Kurt Angle. Angle quickly escaped his own hold and managed to hit The Rock with a rock bottom. Then once The Undertaker had recovered from the chokeslam, he rose to his feet and took out the Olympic gold medalist with an angle slam. The Rock would go on to win the match and win the WWE title in one of the most thrilling matches of all time. Number 6, Shawn Michaels locks in the sharpshooter on Bret Hart at the '97 Survivor Series. Oh come on, we all know this one. It's one of the most infamous uses of another wrestler stealing a finisher of a fellow wrestler, and it was one of the most controversial moments in WWE history. Now for some context, for those who probably haven't watched any wrestling at all, Bret Hart was planning to leave the WWE for WCW. His last pay-per-view match was supposed to be at the '97 Survivor Series in a WWE title match against the Heartbreak Kid. Now Hart had no desire to drop the title to HBK due to the personal animosity between the two men. He also didn't want to lose in Canada. Bret for you. Now Vince would tell Hart that would happen, but secretly behind the scenes, he, HBK and Triple H came up with an elaborate plan to screw Hart of the title and change the match finish without Bret knowing. And this would occur when HBK would lock Hart in Hart's trademark finisher, the sharpshooter. McMahon then called for the bell, meaning HBK won the title, and the most controversial and infamous moment in WWE history was created. Number 8. The Rock vs Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18. When WWE booked The Rock vs Hulk Hogan for WrestleMania 18, they clearly didn't expect the way fans would react to the match. The match itself attained one of the biggest reactions in WWE history, with the fans being invested in every single spot, even though this wasn't actually the main event, which it arguably should have been. What made the match even more interesting was the fact that the fans decided to cheer for the heel Hulk Hogan over the babyface Rock. This meant that the two wrestlers had to change up their plans for the match, and it resulted in The Rock taking on more of a heel stance and Hogan playing the babyface in peril throughout the match. What followed was one of the best matches in history, and a match that holds a special place in the hearts of both The Rock and Hogan. Now, one of the biggest reactions of the match occurred when The Rock would be hit with his own rock bottom finishing move, as Hogan decided to steal it during the match.
And wait a minute! Hogan with a rock bottom!
The crowd absolutely loved this spot, and it was something rare to see, Hogan actually stealing a finishing move. Number 9. Randy Orton hits the Styles Clash on AJ Styles on Raw in 2020. One of the most recent finishes stolen on this list occurred in January of 2020. At the time, AJ Styles and Randy Orton were in a main event feud, which would lead to the Men's Royal Rumble match. One of the stages of the feud was a triple threat match between Orton, Drew McIntyre, and AJ Styles. The inclusion of McIntyre was to build him up as the eventual winner of the Men's Royal Rumble just a few weeks later. But in the match itself, Orton would hit Styles with AJ's own finishing move, the Styles Clash.
No way! Orton! Styles Clash!
The moment has somewhat gone under the radar, as it happened on a random episode of Raw rather than at a major pay-per-view. Additionally, the stolen finisher spot wasn't incorporated into the finish of the match, which is a shame, as it was a fantastic moment and one that attained a huge ovation from the live crowd. Ooh, remember live crowds? And number 10, The Undertaker hits the spear on Edge at SummerSlam 2008. SummerSlam 2008 marked the climax of the legendary feud between The Undertaker and Edge. To close out the feud, the two would main event at SummerSlam with a Hell in a Cell match, which also happened to be the first Hell in a Cell match of the PG era. Despite the obvious limitations, the match delivered, and it was a perfect conclusion to one of the best feuds of either man's careers. What was interesting about the match, though, was that The Undertaker did a spot which was very rare and out of character for his dead man persona. He would hit Edge with Edge's own finishing move, the Spear. This would not just only take the crowd by surprise, but also JR on Taz on commentary to describe the move as retaliation. But there you have it, guys, 10 WWE wrestlers who stole their opponent's finishes during a match. We're sure there are plenty more, so we will do a part 2 on this, so look out for that in the near future. As always, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Facebook for exclusive lists, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.